Everybody got a piece of paper? I asked you that Monday, I know it's going to take me a while, sorry. Sarah, Zan. Karen, could you shut that door?
Hey, questions at the chapter? Is she gonna do questions at the chapter?
Okay, questions. Would you close your books up for a second? Questions are, question number 1. What does BMI stand for?
You need to write down the answer or what?
Just the answer. What does BMI stand for? Okay, we're not opening the door after 1 o'clock as of next week, people, so be here before 1. Name 3 ways to determine, measure body composition. So what is BMI? What does that stand for? That's question number 1. Question number 2. Name 3 ways to measure, determine body composition. What does BMI stand for? Bless you. Name 3 ways that I could work out what my body composition is. Question number 3. Give the 2 main reasons that exercise can help with weight loss. So if I'm trying to lose body mass, what is it about exercising that is beneficial, that's going to help me with that? All right, two main things that taking part in exercise positively adds to trying to lose body mass.
You said it again.
Sure. That's okay. So there's two main reasons that taking part in exercise, physical activity, can help with weight loss. So if I'm trying to lose body mass, what is it about exercising that helps that, benefits that? Question number 1 is what does BMI stand for? Question number 2. Name 3 ways to determine body composition. So if I want to measure my body composition, what ways can I? What options do I have? There's 5, so give me 3 of them. Question number 3 is give the 2 main reasons exercise can help with weight loss. What does exercise do that helps weight loss? I have another minute and then we're going to swap them off with the person next to you, behind you, somewhere. Make sure you've got your name on the piece of paper. All right, trade them off. All right, everybody got someone else's answers? Okay, answer number one. What does BMI stand for? BMI is body mass index. Okay. Number two, 3 ways to determine body composition. So your options, if you using the fancy word, one option is densitometry. The easier version of that is underwater weighing or hydrostatic weighing. So we can do underwater weighing. So that's one option. Option number 2, skin folds. Option number 3, yes sir.
Calipers, is that what it's called?
Calipers. Calipers works. I can take calipers.
Does a skin graft?
Skin graft. No. Third one, again, fancy term, I can't even say it, air displacement plethysmography, the easy version, BOD-POD. Okay? If you got BOD-POD. Now, another option's bioelectrical impedance. And another one is DEXA. Dual X-ray, something absorptometry, but I can't remember what something is. DEXA. Yeah.
With X-ray, MRI,
They're okay because they're in the others, yes. You can put in MRI.
Would that be a degree correct with the whole point? No transfer?
I think if you get less than 3, you can have half. So if you get 2, or I don't know about 1, if you get 2, you can have half. I've got to think about it. And answer number 3, so the main reasons exercise can help with body mass loss, weight loss, is because it increases calorie expenditure and it increases basal metabolic rate, BMR.
Can you say that again?
Increases calorie expenditure, so I use more calories, words to that effect, and it increases BMR, basal metabolic rate.
Sure, yeah.
I've got to think that through. Burning calories, you need to say you increase burning calories, because the increase is the key, right? Because we all burn calories. So it's going to be an increase. Okay. Darren's going to collect those. We're going to start on the chapter. I've got my glasses, so if I'm too in front Right, so please remember when you're studying that the beginning of the chapter has a list of learning objectives for you. Right, those are the things that you should be getting some idea about. All right, no one expects you to know this stuff off the top of your head, off by heart, by the end of one semester. There's way too much information. But if you look at your learning objective list and go, I had no idea what that is, you didn't do enough studying. Okay? So make sure that you're keeping an eye on that list so that it guides through what you should be getting some idea about while you're looking at the chapter. All right, and please understand that class is here to support and facilitate your learning of the material in the chapter. I am not here to tell you every single piece of information that is in the chapter, because we would have to have 5 semesters worth of exercise physiology. So you, just because I did not talk about it or I didn't cover it very much, does not mean you don't need to study it, right? So make sure that you're looking at the entire material in the chapter, unless I tell you not to. Right? If there's something in the chapter I don't want you to bother with, I'll let you know. Okay? Because there are, in some chapters, there's stuff that is way more than you need at this level. Right? Okay, so we're going to look at body composition. Most of us have some interest. We're either trying to lose weight, a large percentage of the population, or we're trying to gain muscle mass, or we're trying to get fitter, right? We're all trying generally to do something with our body composition, or we're trying to make our bones denser because that's healthy. Okay? So when we're looking at body composition, there's some terminology that we have to be familiar with. The absolute amount of fat and non-fat tissue in the body. Okay? What's the absolute amount? So, or do we want to know about the ratio of fat to total body mass? So the terminology and the measurements that we can take, fat mass is the total mass of all fat in the body. And there are some models out there that separate fat mass into different types of fat, visceral fat, subcutaneous fat. But the easiest model just gives us fat mass, right? And fat-free mass, so everything else that isn't fat. So bones, skin, organs, okay, are all fat-free mass. Okay, so what's the mass of all the tissue that is non-fat? Again, there are models out there that will divide that up, because if you have very sophisticated equipment, it is actually possible to tell the difference between the mass of your bones and the mass of your muscles, right? But most of you are applied people, teachers, coaches. You're not going to have access to that kind of equipment, and so I stick with the simplest model. We've got one or the other. It's either fat or it's non-fat, right? The other number that we bandy around a lot, and that especially when we're working with athletes, we're very tied into because it impacts performance, is our percent body fat. Right? What is the ratio of my total body mass to my fat mass? How much of, what's the percentage of my total body mass that is fat? So those all make sense? Okay, so if we know one of these, we should be able to work out the others, right? And they're important measures to understand because we tend to get very hung up on the scale. What do I weigh? Right? We have companies that make money from losing weight, right? And they even use the term weight in their title. But most of the time, do I want to lose weight? When I say I want to lose weight, really and truly, what do you mean? Fat, right? So when we look at these terms, most of the time, not always, because occasionally, particularly with athletes, when they retire, they want to drop some muscle mass. Because it's difficult to buy clothes to fit all that muscle mass, right? So if you can drop a little bit, it's easier to buy clothes. So, but most of the time, for most of the population, we're talking about fat mass, all right? When you stand on a scale, does it tell you how fat you are? No. All right? So we've kind of talked ourselves into this situation where what we care about is that number on the scale, when that really doesn't even measure what it is we were trying to achieve in the first place, which was get lean. Okay? So it's really important that we understand the terms and that we know how to measure them accurately, because a scale doesn't do it. Scales are bad. I don't like scales. So, for example, if you look in your book at this diagram, what we see here are two gentlemen who both weigh 90 kilos. Right? And in this particular instance, they're using underwater weighing. We have a pool, but unfortunately we don't have the equipment to do underwater weighing, which is a bit of a shame because that would be fun. That would be a fun thing to go do, but we don't. Right? So they're going to put them under the water and work out their body composition. So the gentleman on the left, when they put him in the water, weighs 4 kilos. The gentleman on the right weighs 6 kilos. And there's sophisticated equations, and you can use a computer, and they can take that information and calculate body composition because of the amount of water he displays. So what this means is that they displaced 86 kilos for the chap on the left, and that means that his total fat-free mass is 77% of his body mass. 67.4 kilos of his 90 kilos is fat-free mass. That means that 23% of his body mass, 20.7 kilos, is fat mass. Right? So he's 90 kilos on the scale, but his ratio of fat to that 90 kilos is 23%. Okay? When we look at the gentleman on the right, he also weighs 90 kilos. But when you work out the calculation, what we find out is that his fat-free mass is 79.2. That equates to 88% of his total body mass. And his fat mass then is the other 12%, which is 10.8 kilos. So for the exact same weight on the scale, we have a gentleman who is very lean and pretty muscular versus a gentleman who is quite muscular but is carrying a little bit of blood. Right? Not a lot, because 23% isn't really high, but it's quite high for a male. If these were females, 23% would not be raising a red flag. Right? So we'll talk about that. But as a male, 23% is a little bit high. Does that make sense? All right, so whether you're working with PE students, whether you're working with athletes, whether you're working in a personal training with clients scenario. You want to try as much as you can to get away from this idea of A, using the word weight, because that's inaccurate, right? And B, letting people get carried away with what they weigh on the scale. You gotta try to talk people out of worrying too much about the scale. You can use it as maybe, if you're sensible about it, you can use it as a tool to help you stay motivated, possibly. Right? But it should not be the be-all and end-all of the goal of the weight loss program. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So, this is why, at the moment, everywhere you look, people are talking about body composition. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at exercise literature or whether you're looking at regular media, whether you turn a telly on, whether you're looking at a newspaper or listen to the radio. It's everywhere right now. And the reason for that is that we are at a situation where obesity, not just being overweight, but being obese, is becoming such that the percentage of the population that is classified as obese is becoming so high, it's really starting to cause concerns. Depending on who you are, the concerns may be because you care about people's health, or the concerns may be because you care about your money in your pocket, right? Either way, it's a problem because the rates of obesity are going to probably already impacting insurance premiums, and when you guys go out to work, it's only going to get worse, right? So BMI, then, is a tool that is used to red flag people who are at risk. Okay? It's absolutely useless with athletes. Useless. They need to come up with another tool. Right? And if it's being used appropriately, it would be used in conjunction with another measure, like a waist-hip ratio measure, right? Because we calculate BMI using only height and weight, right? So in lab, we're going to look at BMI a little bit more and calculate your BMI, but the only things we do to come up with that number is measure how tall you are and stick you on a scale. Well, we've just said sticking you on a scale doesn't tell us anything. So it's not a gold standard, it's a tool for red flagging people at risk. And it's hopeless for athletes because athletes tend to weigh quite a lot because they're all big and muscly and strong, and muscle is heavy. So if we're looking at a BMI scale, then classifications for adults, this isn't for children, so this is 18 and above, right? Classifications for adults are if your BMI comes out from 25.0 to 29.9, you would be classified as overweight. Okay. To be classified as obese, your BMI number has to come out to equal or greater than 30.0. Right? Now for children it's slightly different because what they do with children is they have it divided up by percentile. So if your child is in the 95th or above percentile for their age and sex, they would be considered obese. So the children's numbers work in a different way. If you are going to work with children and you're interested in understanding that more, there's a lot of information at the CDC, Center for Disease Control website, right, about how to use BMI appropriately with children. So, current trends in the US, England follows fast behind, sadly, but most of the data we're going to look at is in the US. In the US, somewhere around 300,000 people die a year from disease that could be related to being obese. So it's nearly 500,000 people a year. That's a lot of money. If you're being callous, it's a lot of money, right? If you're not being callous and you're worried about people, that's a lot of people. And when we talk about obesity, some types, some instances of obesity are manageable and lifestyle related. So this is nearly 500,000 people dying for something we could change. Somewhere around here, the trend, something like 70% of adults in the US are either overweight or obese, and somewhere around 35% would be classified as obese. So that number goes up and down slightly each year, but on average, that's where you're at right now. That's horrible. Horrible. That means there's only 30% of you who are at a normal weight. And that's probably not, you've probably got, because of some areas of the country, you've probably got some who are underweight. But still, this is not a good number. And it's going up, not down, when we look at the adult population. On the whole, it's going up, not down. And given this, then, it's really odd when you look at, go into Walmart and walk up and down the shelves near the chemist, right? There are shelves and shelves full of diet products, weight loss products. Shelves of them. At any one time, it's estimated that 45% of women and 30% of men are trying to lose weight. But 70% of you are overweight or obese. So that would suggest the diet industry is not working too well, and yet they're making a lot of money off of everybody. Okay? So it's a big problem because there's a lot of false advertising. There's a lot of people making a lot of money off of people's misfortune and being unhealthy. And their products don't work, because if they worked, that number wouldn't exist. Right? So let's have a look. I'm going to turn the light down a bit. I don't know if this will work. Let me know if it doesn't work on the camera down. This is the data up to 2010. The CDC has data every 5 years, so hopefully later this year we'll get 2015 data, and it'll be interesting to see what has changed. But so this is going back to 1995. So the concern here is the prevalence of obesity, because the literature does indicate that you can be overweight and healthy. Right? Overweight is not the same as obese. There's a line there that crosses when you're looking at health outcomes. So I don't have to be really, really thin in order to be healthy. Okay? But I can't be obese and healthy. So we've got to be a little bit careful about how we talk about the overweight population. They're at risk because they're generally heading in the wrong direction, because they get more overweight rather than less overweight. But being overweight doesn't immediately mean I'm not healthy. Okay? So, 1995, you can see here, blue is 10 to 14% of that state's population would have been classified as obese. Pale orange is 15 to 19, green is 20 to 24, dark orange is 25 to 29, purple is more than 30% of the population. So, 1995 looks pretty good, right? As usual, the South aren't looking great. They're unhealthy compared to most of the rest of the country. Right? Got a lot of very poor people there, food choices are bad, the weather isn't always useful when you want to exercise outside, right? It's hot, it's humid. A lot of people don't like working out in that kind of weather, so there's not a lot of, I lived there for 5 years, I know. Right? 2000, which is getting a bit worse. 2005, we now got 3 states by 2005 that had 30% or more of their adult population classified as obese. And then we get to 2010. And now we have no states with less than 14%, and we have 12 states that have 30% or more obesity level at infants. I suspect we might have maybe, is that South Carolina? I think that's South Carolina. I don't know your geography, I don't know my geography well. I suspect North Carolina might be in there by now. I suspect Georgia will be in there. So I think you might have another couple of states that will be interesting to see. I doubt if we've lost any, although these two are interesting. Colorado, still the healthiest place to live in the country. Also one of the most expensive places to live in the country. So think about the correlation there. Right? People in Colorado, in general, not everybody, obviously there are poor populations in Colorado, but in general, Colorado is a very wealthy state. And you have to have a lot of money to live there. And money impacts this picture. Right? So, no state, the government, the feds, had a Healthy People Plan 2010. You might have heard of it. And the goal was to decrease these increasing obesity levels because they recognized by around here that there was a problem. So they put Healthy People 2010 in place. And the goal was that states would decrease their level of obesity. Well, clearly that didn't work. Not a single state in the country met the goals for Healthy People 2010. And they have now created Healthy People 2020. So we're on another push now. All right, that's good for you guys because that means there are jobs out there. Right? Because everybody is freaking out about the lack of activity in this country. No one's prepared to put any money into PE to improve it, but everyone's freaking out about it. So there are jobs out there for you. You're just going to have to be around for it. Right? 6 to 19 years old, you've got around 17 to 17.5% obesity rate in 6 to 19-year-olds. 1 in 8 preschoolers in the country, if you look at the country as a whole, 1 in 8 preschoolers is obese. If you look at New Mexico, it's around the measures New Mexico are taking, they take kindergarten and 3rd grade. So that's 5, 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds. It's running around 30%. It went down fractionally in the last set of data, but not enough to be significant. So somewhere around 30% of 6 and 8-year-olds in New Mexico are obese. And those of you that have taken motor behavior, remember there's a 60% chance of being an overweight adult if you're an overweight 8-year-old. So So that's 30% of your 8-year-old population is already obese, not overweight, obese. Right? So that's, it's awful. It's really, really bad. Why are we worrying? Well, most people are worrying because being obese is associated with some very unpleasant diseases, and a lot of these diseases lead to early death. So these people don't have very good quality of life, and then they die early. So cardiovascular disease, hypertension, blood lipids, so your cholesterol levels. Many will develop type 2 diabetes. A lot of people who are overweight have trouble sleeping properly, and if you don't sleep properly, nothing else works, right? I go to work, I'm supposed to be productive, I'm being paid a salary to do this job, I can't keep my eyes open because I didn't sleep last night. Right? And then I get sacked because I don't do my job, and now I don't have an income. Osteoarthritis isn't going to kill you, but it's really painful living with osteoarthritis. And it can impact your quality of life quite badly depending on how much it develops. Right? Women who are obese tend to suffer with more and higher risk complications during pregnancy and childbirth. People who are obese have problems with surgery. Sometimes they can't even get surgery they need. Going under anesthetic is really risky. It's risky for anybody. It's really risky if you're obese. There are certain types of cancers that are linked to obesity. Right? So the picture's not great. So given the picture's not great, and these are all very ugly, and obviously none of us would choose exactly, at least directly, to develop any disease, right? How do we have such a burgeoning obesity population, right? What's causing it? What's happening? So this becomes a little tricky when you're having conversations with people, because there really isn't a simple answer. And people who are in shape and aren't obese and may not be even overweight and exercise regularly and eat reasonably healthily tend to say, well, they're all lazy and fat and they eat too much. Right? My dad does all the time. Drives me insane. He does it to wind me up, and it works every single time he says it, right? Because there's some truth in that, okay? But it isn't always the problem, and it isn't as straightforward as that, right? I mean, you don't eat well, okay? Why? What's the why they don't eat well? Because the why can get very complicated. It might not be that they just choose to eat sugary food all the time. Maybe they try to eat well, but the food they can afford is not very well made. So, the bottom line reason for being overweight or obese is that you are putting more calories into your body than you are using during the day. Right? Bottom line. The complicated bit, most of the time, becomes why is that happening. So for the majority of people, not everybody, there are some physical, genetic type things that can play a role. We'll have a chat in a minute. But for most people, they overeat for the level of activity they do during the day. So if I am an office worker and I'm sitting at a computer all day long, should I be eating 3,000 calories? Okay. If I'm an athlete and I'm training 3 or 4 hours a day, 3,000 calories for a lot of you doesn't even come close to how much food you need. You're going to be starving if you only eat 3,000 calories. All right? So, for some people, genetics plays a role, because what they're discovering as they're looking at it more and more is that there are certain people who do not produce the enzyme that helps to break down and use fat as an energy source. And therefore it just gets laid down and laid down and laid down and laid down. So they have a digestive, mechanical issue going on in their body that they're not in control of. One of the things that often happens that we see is that people who are obese have it's almost like we have a switch in our brain. Their ability to control their appetite changes. So even though they've eaten a lot, their brain tells them they're still hungry. So they eat more because they're hungry, right? So something goes wrong in the brain's understanding of feeling full, of being satiated. So if you think about eating your big Thanksgiving dinner, right? Sometimes we eat a bit quick, but about 20 minutes after you've eaten, you suddenly go, oh, my belly's gonna burst. Right? You get that really full up feeling. Well, for certain people, that doesn't happen. Okay.
Is that fixable?
I haven't read anything that says it's fixable. It's trainable. So I have read things where they try to take this individual and train them like this is how much you need. Try to visualize what that looks like.
So it's a self-discipline thing?
It becomes a self-discipline thing, yeah, it becomes an understanding. So even though I feel hungry, if I ate that, I can't need the calories, I can't be hungry, it's a fake feeling. And you can train people to learn to ignore that signal. But I haven't yet read of anything where they've managed to turn the signal, correct the signal. Physical inactivity, right? So the other side of overeating is I can eat what the heck I like if I move enough to a point, because there's only so many hours in the day, right? So if I move lots and lots and lots and lots and lots, it's very difficult to overeat. So those two go hand in hand. And then we have cultural factors, which is part of the complicated picture, because we've got groups of people whose cultural food choices are very high in either sugar or fat, and those two types of things carry a lot of calories with them. Right? We have, even if you don't look at a cultural situation, we have developed a life where everybody is very busy and people don't have time or space to grow their own food or cook their own food, so we buy our food, and typically the foods we buy are full of additional calories, right, for lots of reasons. And then we have the McDonald's influence, okay, portion control. So we've got ever-growing portions when you go to fast food joints, or even not fast, even just good restaurants. Right? So portion sizes are massive. A large pizza here is way bigger than a large pizza in London. And the one in London will cost you twice as much. Right? So portion sizes are way bigger. You can drive through and buy a supersized meal. Well, I'll pick on McDonald's because they're the ones I know, a supersize, right? So 2 hamburgers, a large fries, a large Coca-Cola. That is around about 1,800 calories. So if you are a small person, that's possibly more calories than you need in the entire day. Possibly. In one meal. Right? So there's all kinds of problems that are feeding what is going on with obesity in this country. Bash McDonald's. All right, what time is it? Okay, we're going to stop there. We will pick up here on Friday. Okay?